This is what we need to think about, if one is to be suspended, like we're trying to catch an earlier moment, maybe it's that Volvo moment, 17th of June, 1974, for example, where the view from the factory is of the trees, and we're thinking hard about the way to work together as a team and working on a way to know that the future is going to work out just fine, and to find that everything is a trajectory. That's one choice. Or repression, on the other hand, the idea of creating the conditions for the experimental but no experiment. It's another possibility. Because we're really looking at what you could call the redundancy following the lure of infinite flexibility. And you've got to remember that we're redundant at this point. We've got lots of time, the factory, the wholesale transfer of activity. Now we still have to address the idea that this is still a phantom in the framing of what we could call a discursive project. We have to address this fact, this loss, the reduction of leisure as a promise and a marker, for example, and the question now, of course, is the question now is always, how do you know how much leisure you're having? But this is a crucial point.
I am an athlete. I am a scientist.
I am international.
I am a fire spinner.
I am a designer.
I am a volunteer.
I am a veteran.
I am an entrepreneur.
I am a gay man.
I am a future architect.
I am a photographer.
We are twins.
I am a gamer.
We are deaf.
I am an immigrant.
I am Catholic.
I am a musician.
I'm a senior citizen.
I am a mother. I am a law enforcement recruit.
I am agriculture.
All we're doing is working towards the idea of creating a predictive model that doesn't actually work at all as a functional projection. It becomes a promise always, just out of reach. The sense of no surprise is something that's very complicated because it's very much connected with this territory between the trajectory of modernity on one hand and the trajectory of modernism. The discursive framework most profoundly in the gap between the trajectory of modernity as a flow of technologies, developments of consolidation, but ideologically and intellectually in opposition to this now closed post-war period which still remains modernist period in the sense that it encourages super self-consciousness, super subjectivity, and that kind of thing. It encourages a circling the drain, endless sequence of reference points. model is really the phantom parallel. Suddenly you also meet this European neurosis, or the fact that we have to suddenly think about the idea of the edge, which is to do with this idea of the federated. The federated as an idea is something that tends to be ignored. But within this idea of the discursive framework, which can often function like a federated, organized series of organizations, once it goes beyond the collective, or goes beyond the communal, or beyond the suspended, it becomes essentially a series of federations, or it's a kind of federated model. It's not truly a Republican model, it's not truly a kind of super-subjective model either. It often feels like a federation of
Have you ever dreamed of having croissants served in a hotel room in Paris? I am going to give you my secret. With my recipe, you will succeed.
So you come back to this idea of the factory and the wholesale transfer of activity. Now, one of the key reasons reoccupation, renovation, aimless renovation, recuperation become a dominant feature of the discursive frame is due to the legacy of the occupation of space rather than time. We were told about the moment when the building was occupied, the moment when the university was occupied, the moment when the factory was occupied, and became quite clear during the right-wing backlash that was planned in the mid-70s and came into operation in the Anglo-Saxon context in 7980 with the appearance of Thatcher Reagan. It's quite clear that there was a very careful attempt made to ensure that this idea of occupation of space could never any longer become truly traumatic. And the day after, the notion of reoccupation therefore being a good potential phrase to describe an act that is more to do with taking over for the first time. And this is a crucial idea. So the idea of maybe one answer, maybe one way of dealing with this is the idea of reoccupying a space that was never really occupied in the first place. The trajectory of reoccupation, the classical flow of the idea of reoccupying becoming an active thing, is in fact more about the notion of taking over for the first time. It's not actually a reoccupation to take something over for the first time. And it's all connected to the lure of a practice that opens the opportunity to become an unexamined and free agent in a collective project. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's the idea that the discursive frame, strangely enough, while it appears to be open, strangely enough, actually does allow a hiding or caching within the collective. It allows the development of a set of arguments and individual positions to develop without the necessity to embody a quality that insists on the autonomous or the transparent. So you can have incomplete projects, you can have partial contributions, you can have all these aspects which are crucial in order to make an effective, progressive, critical environment. anxiety about who controls the reshaping of the story of the recent past, and this question of anxiety about the recent past is a crucial component. The discursive framework has been predicated on one form of postmodern understanding, that the idea of a dominant voice is in itself an authored voice or a clear-cut authored content, or the idea of the dominant voice as an authored voice or clear-cut authored content is suspicious politically and socially and ideologically. It does become of potential use, structural use, in the sense of the planned quality of a factory, because in spite of the fact that the factory is always emblematic of the speculative thing, one always speculates, that's what a certain speculation produces. They lure production, they lure industry, they lure investment. But in order to effectively activate speculation, you have to plan. Suddenly this thing seems to me like a possibility. This idea of viewing a place like that as a production cycle, a production thing, as a model, instead of the idea of always looking at it as a permanent association for free time. And within this, of course, you've got to imagine the potential refusal and collective ennui. That's one of the factors of the factory. The potential of refusal is always something that's just alongside meaning, refusal of meaning, refusal to behave, refusal to operate properly, refusal to take part, refusal to be a good citizen within the relational community, these kind of things. This, combined with permanent displacement exercise, becomes, in a way, becomes the source of the problem. So, this comes back again to the increasing gap between the process of modernity, meaning just the process of technology, the process of population growth, process of development, all these kinds of processes, and modernism. There have been some descriptive shifts to account for some late modernist peculiarities, but effectively modernism is the primary tool. Somewhere in the space, some people have been operating in the trajectory of modernity and the self-conscious circling the drain, super-subjective battle between the autonomous and the non-autonomous. The Zora takeover is an actual replacement. This has strong implications for us if you believe in temporal games. A time-based, it's like the idea of a time-based game of recuperation. This is what we end up with this idea of modeling the factory.